In this video, I'm going to talk you through how I choose camera bodies. I'd like to focus on basic budgeting for a camera body, defining the purpose for which you're buying the camera body, and how I think about the real value that the features that manufacturers pack into cameras. On screen, I have some basic math for what one might be able to reasonably save in budgeting for a camera body or a lens or whatever it happens to be. In case the times 26 is a little confusing, there are 26 pay periods in a year, assuming your employer pays you every 2 weeks. So now that we've kind of gotten the basics of budgeting out of the way, let's think about what differentiates one camera body from another. That first thing for me that can differentiate one camera body from another is how I'm going to use it. Do I want to mostly take photos, or do I mostly want to take video? In what conditions do I do most of my shooting? Many modern cameras are equipped well for both photos and video and have good megapixel counts and can operate well at higher ISOs than in the past. If you'll bear with me, I feel like there are important differences, and I'll try to explore. There was a notable amount of hype in 2016 on crop sensor bodies, and some people even called it the year of the crop sensor body. There are several crop bodies that are very good that came out this last year that myself and creators with a lot more clout than I have believe are really great cameras. I even bought a Sony Alpha 6300 despite primarily shooting Canon. As a brief history to my camera, I was given a Canon XS several holiday seasons ago, and I loved that camera. It was great for me at the time. And then about 2 years ago, I upgraded to the Canon 6D. What precipitated that purchase was a feeling that I could no longer get quality of images that I wanted out of the environments that I normally found myself, out of the camera body, given the environments that I normally found myself in. There were a few important points that I discovered in working with the Canon. I shot a lot, and I shot a lot in the environments that I normally shot in. I shot the normal things that I wanted to, the images that I wanted to be able to get normally. Because I did all that shooting, I was able to identify exactly what the weak points were that I wanted shored up. I wanted better low light performance most of all. When I traveled, I oftentimes found myself in churches or in museums, and those don't really lend themselves well to being well-lit environment. When I was home shooting friends and family, I oftentimes found myself not in a situation that was geared towards good lighting, and so I had to deal with the available, i.e. poor, lighting to get the images that I was also tired of having to multiply my focal length by the crop factor. And the lenses that I had really were not well balanced with the Canon XS, and oftentimes that meant that my wrist really took a beating. Finally, I wanted shallower depth of field. One can make wonderful images with any camera, be it a smartphone or a potato, but I really love really good subject isolation, and I feel like you can do that best, one can do that best with a narrow depth of field, like you can get better on a full frame camera versus an APS-C size camera. So kind of what you can pull away from what my experience was is I shot a lot, and I would recommend that you do the same. I recommend you shoot a lot in all of the normal environments that you're in where you shoot, and that you look very closely at what images you're trying to get and what the camera can or cannot do for you with those environments trying to get those images. I identified what features I wanted in a camera. I did a lot of research to discover what features I wanted in order to exactly hit the needs that I felt I had in terms of image. So in summary, the following points should be useful regardless of which manufacturer you choose to buy from. The first thing that I would recommend is to shoot just a lot. Without shooting a lot, it feels to me like it would be very difficult to actually identify what features you really want that the camera that you currently have doesn't have, because you don't know the full range, because you're not using the full range all the time of that camera's ability. For example, when I was at the very, beginning of vlogging, I'm still pretty early with that whole process, but when I was at the very beginning, I found myself shooting a lot at night in the dark because I was at work during the day, and I shot a little at work, and I've since been told that I can no longer do that. But I shot a lot at dark because that's when I wasn't at work. That's when I could really provide more content, when I could spend time on making the vlog because I was out of work and able to have some time for myself. However, I couldn't really take the footage out of the 60 above. I couldn't really take the image out of the 60 above 1600 ISO without experiencing what I felt like was a huge loss in image quality. However, when I started shooting on the 6300, I found myself shooting more during the day at my breaks and over lunch and all that, because it was such a small and light package that I could take it anywhere and use it with much more unobnoxiously. It was much less obnoxious to tote a much smaller package around. My second point is to identify the features that you want. And if you stay current with the camera market, you'll probably be able to say with a degree of confidence, okay, this is the one that I want. This is kind of a fun place to be from that perspective, where you can say, this is the one that I want. You can go crazy over it and watch all the reviews and do all that stuff. And that leads into my third point: do your research. There's really no substitute for work, no matter what it is that we're talking about. And this is where the real work is. It can be an exhausting process to get to a point where I know that I'm not making a purchase based on an emotional or a gut reaction to a particular camera. And there is a lot of research that is necessary to get to that point. Where I want to be is where I can feel like I'm buying based on the actual necessity being actually filled by the camera that I'm interested in buying. In the case of the 80D versus the Alpha 6300, the 80D was the emotional choice. I already had the lenses, I already knew how to work with the Canon, with the footage from the Canon, and it had autofocus, which was the big thing that I wanted. It had a better 1080 image than the 60, which is also something I really wanted. So it kind of was the full package for where I was at, and what a great way to stay kind of within that comfort zone. I already had the batteries, I already had the lenses, it was a great thing. However, I really felt like the 6300 would allow me to capture images and create videos that I felt like would take the entire thing to the next level. It felt like, to me, a difference between a B- and maybe a B+ versus with the 60 to 80D versus the difference between a B- to an A in terms of image quality. Step 4 in my process is just to wait. I'm very good at taking a long time to make my first decision, and then what I'll do once I do that is I'll waffle like crazy. And that's because by that point I know enough about all of the options that it's very hard for me to stay with the decision that I've made. There are too many known variables that all have impacts that I know that I would feel in particular ways for me to be sure of that decision. However, when I give myself time to go through that process, when I do arrive, which I tend to in about a week or two, at that final decision, I'm very confident that that is exactly what I want and exactly what I need to be able to do what I want and what I need to with that device. That's kind of all I have for this video. I hope it gave you insight into a different perspective, and I hope that you'll find that useful. I've been really excited about bringing this to you and thinking about it and making it, and I'm really interested in your engagement with this particular piece of content and with the ideas that I've presented. So please, if you enjoyed this, don't hesitate to like, comment, or subscribe, whichever you prefer. I really appreciate your time, and I am looking forward to seeing you in the next one.